I'm Isis Romero, and this is the news in San Antonio. With widespread damage to roads and homes, Kerrville residents affected by the floods are trying to salvage what they can. They're doing that as they also grieve the loss of neighbors and loved ones. Rania Kaur has one woman's story.
Behind me, you can see just how powerful this flood truly was. These trees, which were once tall, are now completely bent. And we now know that a victim from Hunt's belongings were found here in Kerrville. Everywhere you look, someone has been impacted. It's a grim reality.
Almost everybody that I talk to in town knows someone.
As the number of those that have lost their lives in this flood continues to grow, Debbie Knabel is processing the loss of a member of her church.
I woke up at 6 and I knew that our road was covered in about over 3 feet of water and that we couldn't drive out. And within 4 hours of that, I knew that she had been found dead in her house and her son had been airlifted. And her funeral's this Saturday.
She lives right across the Guadalupe River, where trees have bent, intertwining with debris and other items.
It's real difficult every time I walk out of the house, seeing the change in the river and knowing how many people have died. So it's just like a mild shock.
She rode out the storm.
The police were back going from house to house saying, you have a small window to get out safely. And so I drove away with my stuff, but I chose the wrong gate, got stuck in mud, and decided to come back home and just hunker down.
Their neighborhood now cleaning up with the help of volunteers. You've been through a lot.
I've been through a little in comparison. Yeah, it's like nothing.
Rania Kaur, KENS 5.
Political leaders have been in and out of Kerrville, providing resources and support after last week's flooding. They're also looking ahead on how to prevent an incident like this from happening again. Earl Stoudemire explains.
I spoke one-on-one with Senator Ted Cruz and State Representative Wes Friedel, and they both say their first step is to help the Hill Country rebuild and recover. Their next step is looking at what could be done better. Ted Cruz brought up the idea on how we can improve emergency response times and what can be most effective to accomplish this. I asked him about the possibility of a siren system along the Guadalupe River, and he says it could be a possibility, but wants to review the entire situation before making a move with federal support. What do you think, in your opinion, can be done better moving forward for here in Kerr County and Central Texas and the Hill Country that you're thinking about?
Well, listen, as I said, that's going to entail looking to what exactly transpired and taking time based on the actual evidence of what happened to say what would be more effective. I'm confident that conversation will play out in the weeks and months ahead.
On the state side, Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick says the state should cover the cost for sirens to be installed along the Guadalupe if Kerr County can afford it. State Representative Wes Friedel, representing the Hill Country, says he's going to continue to push for state funding at the Capitol and wants to improve cell service in the Hill Country. House Bill 13 was a recent bill Friedel voted against that would have created a new government council to make an emergency response plan.
House Bill 13, had no transparency for how government money could have been allocated, and it was actually more of over a 10-year period. I think it would have been a very ineffective bill, and it didn't have transparency that the people of Texas deserve to have with any government agency.
So would you be open if there was transparency on how it was spent to kind of improve that? And then, well, I'll just leave it at that.
Yeah, I would be open to discussing it more.
Governor Abbott released a statement Sunday saying potential solutions to warn anyone along the Guadalupe will be discussed in a special session on July 21st. In Kerrville, Earl Stoudemire, KENS 5.
Many questions are being asked about whether there was sufficient warning ahead of the deadly flooding. Meteorologist Paul Mireles breaks down the timeline of alerts and warnings from the National Weather Service.
First of all, thoughts and prayers to everybody that was affected in the flooding. But if you haven't seen the timeline leading up to the event, this is pretty much it. We put this together here at the KENS 5 Weather Center. All right, forecasts from the National Weather Service out of San Antonio and Austin, they started mentioning the potential for flooding as early as Tuesday. Of course, not catastrophic flooding, but flooding. And now the day before that Thursday afternoon, a flash flood watch was issued for the Hill Country. And at 6:10, there was a special discussion that came out talking about flash flooding being likely and that the rates would be up to 3 inches per hour. And also numerous weather meteorologists were putting out posts on Facebook that there was a potential for flooding in the Hill Country for that night. Okay, the first warning came out at 1:14. It was a flash flood warning, and that typically triggers the emergency wireless alerts. And then at 2:28, there was a flash flood communication talking about how 5 inches of rain had fallen. And then at 3:35, there was another warning that said that the threat level was considerable. Also, there was at 3:02 a flash flood communication, and then a potentially dangerous situation came out with a flash flood emergency for Kerr County at 4:03. Okay, just how was the river responding? Well, until about 3:30 in Hunt, the river flooding was moderate, and then rapidly became major. At Hunt, the Guadalupe River reached major flood stage at about 4:10, and then after that became catastrophic. About the same timeline for Kerrville, hit major flood stage somewhere around 4:10 in the morning as well. So this is a detailed timeline on exactly what happened in that flood. And again, just been a real heavy situation, and our thoughts and prayers go out to all those that are involved.
A Lake Hills cafe near Bandera shut its doors to customers, but later opened them for a different purpose. They're helping people affected by the flooding. The owner says he's hoping to help the smaller communities that are often overlooked.
We are taking clothes right now, clothes donations. We're separating it, sorting it, men's, women's, kids, or whatever, and then making sure that we have them for whenever the time comes that the families need them.
The cafe doors remain open for donations, and they say they'll keep going as long as they're needed. And we want to remind you about our program called KENS Cares. We're asking for your help to support recovery efforts. You can scan the QR code and donate to our flood relief fund. Your donation will go directly to flood victims. And that's the news in San Antonio.